Well, good morning, everybody. It's Truth and Reconciliation Day in Canada. And I know for a lot of First Peoples, that's an important milestone and reflection of the absolute traumatic abuse of the Canadian system. I don't like to talk about it too much because, unfortunately, I've studied this country intimately in its laws and in its design. And as we've just seen in the last, I lost everybody. In the last few weeks, the Nazified Parliament bringing in a Nazi and their denial that it was just one man. Crown customary law was ignored for some reason for the first time in Canadian history ever, which is baloney. Just like Truth and Reconciliation Day when we talk about Indigenous, which is another problematic narrative that they impose on the First Peoples as an absolute lie, especially for the treaty numbered and unceded Indians in Canada. And that is the term, the absolute legal term, by the numeral 1 law, the Indian Act 1876. It's the absolute birth of what they call Nazification. What happened with Germany and the Jews, what would go on in the same Indian Act, literally titled the Indian Act of South Africa, apartheid, which would lead to apartheid against native South Africans. Canada's design is always about a first, second, third class and a savage people. For the First Peoples, you often talk about the canoe and the boat and meeting the Europeans. Well, those are the first class. And what's never talked about what was under the bow of the ship, and that was those in chains rowing the boat. Serfs and peasants, no one likes to talk about that. This is the absolute design of that colonial system that is ever present in Canada today. And there will never really be any truth and reconciliation or any real change in Canada until we look hard at the actual law, not the rights of Indigenous people, that isn't international law. It's non-binding. It's Canada's baloney as they've left the International Court of Justice and they continue on absolutely under the Indian Act 1876, which in this world today you will trace every example of every constitutional monarchy that participated in Nazification, which is that design. It was taken from numeral 101 Canada, that is still legislated today. I know a lot of people want to forget and move on and look at it in a different lens, but it's not gone. It's never going to be gone. As long as we have an Indian Act, as long as we label a class of human beings as non-human beings, as savages, this country will never move on. And you will always have class structure, first, second, and third. Slaves to serve a divine master. And that's the birth of it. The First Peoples are front and center on it. And it's sad that so many don't see it, don't want to look at it, because I promise you, Truth and Reconciliation Day will never mean much of anything in effective change until we address the actual laws in place and we dismember the constitutional acts of Canada in relation to that design. That's my video. It's the best I can do for people. I know residential school genocide is traumatic, and I understand the importance of addressing that today, and I'm all for that. But the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People is not the answer. Not when Canada cements and holds to its bosom and its highest laws of the land, the 1876 Indian Act. And as long as we do that, and that's our overriding law, and that's bound to our Constitution, there will never be any effective change. Not for any Canadians, and certainly not for those First Peoples. That's my video. Share. Make sure to remember that today. Bye now.